Good evening and welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show. I am sorry we're having some timely issues here, but I am here on intellectualradio.com. I hope that we are live. Please forgive me for running behind, but we are here. We've got a program for you of great information that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking with Ezra McCann, who is a retired Chicago firefighter. Just a little bit later on, down at the bottom of the hour, we're going to be talking about why the city of Chicago is not honoring its agreement that it's going to hire 30% of its hires are supposed to be from the African American community, Black men and women on the police department. I think that that number is somewhere. I'm not even going to say what that number is, but it's certainly not where it's supposed to be. But we're going to be talking about that in the bottom of the hour. Certainly hope that you all stick with us with that. And also going to be talking about, I want to share with you on what Republicans have been doing and how they have been trying to dismantle the democratic process, democracy, for the past 40, 50 years. And I'm going to be going through an article of that. I want to share some things with you for those people who think that that is the way for the average working person to go, but it is not. So I'm going to share with you just what has been going on within the Republicans and what they have been doing in terms of trying to hijack American democracy and how we can take it back. And so in a single memo that they had launched the strategy to control media, courts, and public opinion, reshaping the American democracy. And to reclaim it, Democrats must build a powerful media and policy network. I am a registered Democrat. I am going to stay a registered Democrat. There was a time that I was very frustrated, and I am still frustrated with the Democratic Party on so many levels. However, it's the best vehicle that we have for advancing progress for the average working person and for the average Black person in this country. And they have the history of providing the kinds of advancements that over the past 50 years that we currently enjoy today. Republicans have participated in some things like affirmative action, but Republicans took it back from us twice. So Republicans, the bottom line is they don't have an agenda for the average working person. So I'm going to share some things with you tonight. And a quote that came from Thomas Jefferson said that if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. That was Thomas Jefferson in a letter to Colonel Charles Yancey, January the 6th, 1816. January the 6th, 1816. Republicans are using their massive structural media and social advantage to try to destroy Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, and the California Democratic Party with respect to these fires. Now, there have been more than 8,000 homes that are lost in this horrific fire that was largely spread through high speed and high traveling winds that were blowing these fire motes into destroying more than 8,000 homes. Now, to suggest and to use that to try to politicize that if you have 8,000 homes, now if you look at the average fire, we had a fire here in Chicago on the south side of Chicago at 75th and Cornell, an old abandoned building. At that one building, there were at least 4 fire engines at that one building. 4. So on your average fire, you're going to have 3 to 4 engines. Imagine 8,000 homes, and this progressed over in less than a week. Over 8,000 homes where there's these brush fires were blowing through. So 8,000 times 3, that's 24,000 engines. No city in America, no state in America is prepared for that kind of carnage. So for them to use and try to politicize and try to destroy Gavin Newsom, obviously they want to try to impact Gavin Newsom because, you know, he may run for president in the next 3.5 years. If he does run for president in the next term, and he is the nominee, I will be working feverishly to participate and to encourage, to campaign on behalf of Gavin Newsom to become the next president of the United States if he happens to be our nominee for the Democratic Party. So, but this is what they were trying to do, trying to destroy Karen Bass, trying to destroy Gavin Newsom, and trying to somehow dump this on the Democratic Party. But let's talk about this. There was a guy by the name of Mike Caruso. Mike Caruso, who is a very wealthy real estate developer in California, who ran against Karen Bass and lost. But he was I forget what his position is. I'll find out what his position was at the time. But he was the person that were compromising Los Angeles infrastructure way back in the 90s when he was there. So if they want to, their water reserves, so if they want to cast some responsibility, this was the person who was doing it. Then it's now been discovered that he was contacting these private fire departments to try to protect his properties. This is the way that the Republicans conduct themselves. And this has been their mantra forever, that they don't care about even their own people. They just care about the preferential few. And they care about fueling and miseducating and misrepresenting what the actual truth is. It follows an old script that's recently played out in Russia, in Hungary, among other nations, where they want to seize control of the nation and turn it into a neo-fascist state with the consent of the people. Just take control of the channels, of the public information, of the news, and then turn lies about your opponents and their supporters into perceived realities. How do they do this, and why do they do this? The reason why they do it is because they know that if they take control of the information channels, and then you have you direct the narrative, that the average person is not going to or does not have access to being able to decipher what the actual facts are. When you have control of the media, that's what they did in this country way back in the 90s. So over 50 years ago, Democrats have been busy focusing on working out policies to benefit the average American, increasing access to Medicare, $35 insulin, reducing student debt, the CFPB to protect people from banks, cleaning up the environment, American Rescue Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, while the Republicans and the rich billionaires align themselves that fought against all of these, but yet they are now benefiting from them in their countries or in their states. So this is the mantra for the Republicans. All of these policies that Democrats have been working on for the past 50 years, not perfectly, but have been working on to make things better. Now, granted, there are some areas where Democrats have gone outside of what the progressive ideas of the average working person and trying to play to the corporatists. And we have to fix those parts of the Democratic Party. We absolutely have to fix those parts. You and I have to do that. This is why I do these podcasts. I don't do these podcasts because I want to be famous. I don't do this kind of work because I want to be a personality. I'm doing this to reach any of us so that we can organize ourselves together, so that we can strengthen ourselves, so that we can make things better, that we can have the people who are working in the positions that we put them in, that we can make things better for the average person. That is why I do what I do here. I don't do this because I have any interest whatsoever, at becoming a star. Now, if I become a star in terms of helping us be stronger advocates, so be it. If it brings more attention and that we're able to align more of us together, to work together, to improve the conditions for our people, to lift people out of poverty, to make sure that people have access to affordable health care, to make sure that people have access to great education, that people have access to a great job, to be able to take care of themselves and take care of their families, so be it. That is why I do this. Some people may say, wow, it sounds pretty lofty or Pollyannish. So be it. I believe that we can do it. And we ought to continue to work to do it. I'm certainly going to do it as long as God gives me the strength and the ability and the wherewithal. I am going to continue to do this work. And I hope that you, however many of you who may be paying attention, whoever may be interested, will stay in this effort so that we can advance things better for our people here, and that it can spread across the diaspora of the country for all of our people, making the world just that much better of a place. So in this article, it continues to show where the Republicans, the billionaires, line themselves, not only fought against the efforts to make things better for their own people, but far more importantly, they have engaged in a massive power play to shift control of the popular opinion and thus control our government toward themselves in a way that they believe could be permanent. That's what these efforts are. To permanently and in a totality way disenfranchise the rest of us. If you are not paying attention, if we are not paying attention to what is going on, and they can have us fighting each other, throwing stones at each other, distracted while they are over crafting ways to keep us disenfranchised. One of the easiest ways to determine who wants for there to be equitable participation and who does not. Why would you think that Republicans would pass 223 voter suppression laws? Why would you think that Republicans would advance a bill in Georgia that says to a woman, the only way that you can register to vote is that your ID must line up with your birth certificate? What does that say to women who are married that have taken their husband's last name, that has legally changed their name, or anybody who has legally changed their name? That legal name is their legal name identified that they have lived under, and that they have written checks, open bank accounts, open savings accounts, gotten jobs, gotten loans, gotten mortgages. But now you have Republicans who say the only way that you're going to be able to be a registered voter is that your voter ID must line up with whatever was on your birth certificate. Why would, when 1.2 million ex-offenders in the state of Florida get their rights to vote again, Republicans put forth a bill that says they haven't completed their sentence? And they haven't completed their sentence based on the fact that they haven't paid full restitution. And if they owe $1, then they have not fully completed their sentence. So therefore, they cannot legally be registered to vote. 1.2 million people who got their rights back, and then the Republican legislature and the Republican governor passed this piece of legislation to disenfranchise 1.2 million people who had successfully completed their sentence and registered to vote, and they even arrested some of those people. It is astonishing. It is astonishing that this is what they do. But not only is what it do, then just make sure that you pay attention to who's making it harder for a person to vote. I want to say hello to all of those who have joined on YouTube, all of you who have joined on Instagram, and to all of you who have joined on Facebook. Thank you all for tuning in to the program, and certainly ask you to please share this with other members in your social networks so that we can collaborate ourselves together, so that we can organize to make ourselves stronger, to impact all of these areas that are important for our communities. Now, I'm supposed to be having a guest coming on at 7:30, and we're going to come back and talk about this because I want to get through this. But I want to read something to you. It says, the plan for what they were trying to do. This wasn't a secret. It was laid out in a 1971 memo by tobacco lawyer Lewis Powell, who Richard Nixon put on the Supreme Court in 1972, where he could participate in putting the plan into action, as he did with the Buckley and Bellotti decision. Powell wrote the letter legalizing political bribery by saying, money is free speech and corporations are persons. This was in 1972. So this was not Mitt Romney who came up with this. This was just Mitt Romney who reinforced it, and the Supreme Court decided the decision of Citizens United, which says that people could actually legally bribe judges and politicians. It began the corruption of American government by the Reagan administration, but the details of the GOP's effort, which Democrats and wealthy Democratic donors should begin to emulate. Now, if our republic is to survive, it is rarely discussed. Here's what they did in an outline: how Democrats can fight back, right? So they go through a few items. Just hang on just one second, because someone is trying to get a hold of me and I can't talk to them now. I think they're trying to log on, but I'm going to have to tell them they've got a text. Hopefully they can come on. I'm not sure what their situation is. All right. So, so here are some of the steps that they go through. Right. First, Republicans realized that public opinion drives everything, so they set out to seize as much control of the instruments that drive public opinion as they could the media. How did they go about doing this? Remember George W. Bush. In the 1990s, what they did was deregulated so that conglomerates could buy up as much media as possible. And they had where iHeartRadio bought up all of these radio stations. They bought up about 1,000 radio stations all across the country. Here in Chicago, they bought up most of them. All across the country. So they bought up 1,000 media outlets. And they dictate what goes out on the air of those 1,000 media outlets, because they know that they can influence what a person actually believes or what a person actually decides to believe, because the average person, again, is not going to go and, one, fact check what they hear or what they hear out on a radio station or television broadcast. Largely, they give deference to. So if it was said on a television, you're going to have people who run, just like people will hear if you're listening here, or somebody sees something on TikTok or YouTube and they see something that come across that somebody has said, they're going to take it and run. As long as it is titillating to that person, and somehow they try to say, whoa, this is what they shoot, or they have this interesting way of making it look interested, and they put up all kinds of graphics and this or that or the other, and they say it, and then you run off with it as though you're telling an actual fact. For instance, the woman today, I was talking with somebody about the fire that took place on 75th and Cornell, and she said that a woman said to her, well, I don't want to spread anything that's not true, but I was told. Well, you just said that you didn't want to spread anything that was not true, and you were not sure, so you were just told something. So you shouldn't be repeating it because you don't know it to be factual. But that's what their plan is, and they know this. They understand this. It's calculated. They're not interested in purveying the truth. They're only interested in garnering power to do what it is that they want to do through the ignorance of the public and misleading the public. And then there are some of us who will buy into it. But as I would say, you have to, as the scripture says, test the spirit by the spirit. Well, you have to try the facts by the facts. And the one way that you can test it, what have the Republicans put forth in terms of public policy that has benefited the average American worker in this country in the past 40 years? I've asked that question way back in 2009 and 10 and all the way up to now, and nobody can provide the substantive policies. Not one. Because that's not what their goal is. That's not what their interest is. So the facts are the only thing that matters. Your opinion, your feelings are not facts. Your thoughts are not the truth. Only the facts are the facts. And that's what we must allow for ourselves to accept the facts, not based on what we feel. Because your feelings, in many times, are antithetical to the truth. And our feelings have gotten us into trouble more often than not because we just felt something and we did based on what we felt, not based on what we understood. So I got to find out what's going on. My guest is having some difficulties. I'm trying to get them on. We're going to be talking about this. No, you don't. All you have to do is log in. Yeah. So, all right, let me go back to this article. All right. By the way, also, I'm going to give you an opportunity to call in. I certainly want to hear from you if you want to participate in the program. So I'm going to open up the phone line so that you can call in and participate, because that's what this is. This is not a sit on the sideline spectator sport. We've got to get engaged. We've got to get active. We got to participate together so that we can make things better for our communities. Stronger. When our communities are stronger, guess what? Everybody's communities do well. When our communities do better, everybody does better. And we should want for people to do better because it brings about much more positive results. All right. So my telephone number here is 951-221-8221. Excuse me. 951-221-8221 is the telephone number. All right. So that if you want to participate in the program. All right. So I'm trying to hopefully that my guest is going to come on. We're going to be having a series of conversations about why it is that the Chicago Fire Department seems to be walking away from its commitment to hiring 30% of its hire from the African-American community. African-American men and women want to serve on the fire department. African-American men and women are very qualified to do so. We have an African-American mayor and we have an African-American as the fire commissioner. Why is this so hard? What's the resistance? What's the rub? They certainly have met that, to my understanding, with the hires from the Hispanic community as well. They should. What's the rub, and why are they walking away with it from the African-American community? And please don't tell me about they can't find enough qualified Black people. What an insult. What an insult to yourself if that is a Black person who has embodied that kind of an opinion. And certainly what an insult if it's coming from anybody else about our communities and people in our communities. We certainly have as many, if not more, people who would be qualified for any position if given an equal opportunity. So therefore, I'm going to continue until my guests, until I see them in the green room. I don't see them in the green room, so I'm going to have to continue because I do want for us to understand just what is at stake here and what we have to do. Now, here's the second way that we can fight back. Number two, this is what they are planning to do. All right. Second, they realize that the Senate, these are the Republicans now, they realize that the Senate was the power base linchpin for control of the legislative branch and the key to controlling both the executive and judicial branches, because only the Senate can confirm presidential cabinets, positions, and federal judges. That's why the Senate is considered to be the part of our congressional body that they consider to be the elite. All right. And that is because you have the kind of power to determine. Now, in congressional districts in states, it's based on population. So districts are set up through, they're done through the census, and then based on the census is based on a number of people in those districts. And so based on the number of people, they determine how many congressional districts that they will have, and so forth and so on. But every state, regardless, right? Regardless. So, but every state, regardless of population, there are 2 senators. Whether you have a state that has 800,000 or 900,000 people, or whether you have a state that has 30 million. Places where you have 8 or 9, they still have 2 senators. And so Republicans understood this, and they have worked for the past 50 years to try to take control of the Senate. If they controlled the Senate much of the time and occasionally got a Republican president, they could also easily stack both the federal judiciary and the Supreme Court, which they have done. They got one of the dumbest presidents, one of the most unscrupulous presidents, and that person who has had no legislative, no governmental, and certainly no lax character, has nominated 3 people to lifetime positions on the Supreme Court. And you now have 6 of the most conservative to 3 progressive leaning justices and their lifetime positions. And nothing short of some sort of God intervention that we are going to have to live with that probably for the rest of my lifetime. So, and then you have these conservative federal judges that Trump also put on the bench, but we have a number of federal judges that President Biden has put on, including black women. He's put more black women on the federal bench than any other president. I think some uh, 38 black women on the federal bench. So the Senate carries a lot of weight. They carry a lot of weight. So to control the Senate, they knew that they had to control a majority of the states. And that came back to controlling public opinion through the media, particularly in low population or largely rural state medias, could be bought and co-opted very inexpensively. To first influence public opinion back in the 1970s through the 1990s era, billionaires associated with the GOP built a whole series of institutions whose sole purpose was to influence public opinion in ways that comported with the billionaires' oligarchy agenda. They cranked out policy papers, which means that they went around. They had these conventions. There's this thing called the American Legislative Exchange Commission. They would go around having conventions where they would actually write public policy and invite their conservative state representatives, their local politicians to come to their judges to come to their conventions. And they would literally hand them policies that they would go back and that they would try to get through the legislators. They would write op-eds for newspapers and websites, engage in social media, and provide expert guests on television programs, conservative programs, which, were made to seem as though that they were experts, like Fox News, NPR, and podcasts. Another major function is to educate and lobby Republican elected officials about policies and nominees to executive and judicial positions. They had all kinds of groups doing this work. Some of the groups they had was the Cato Institute, the Marquesas Center at George Mason University, Americans for Prosperity, the Heritage Foundation, the Manhattan Institute, the American Enterprise Institute, Competitive Enterprise Institute, Donors Trust, Independent Women's Forum, Federalist Society, Judicial Crisis Network, Republican State Leadership Committee, the Alliance Defending Freedom, Marble Freedom Trust, the 85 Fund, formerly the Judicial Education Project. Many of these, this is the efforts of the Republicans, not to do the work to try to improve the lives of people. They are secretly trying to dismantle our democratic process. Why are they trying to do that? The overwhelming majority of registered voters in the United States of America are registered Democrats and vote mostly Democratic. The population of the registered Republicans in the country is somewhere between 40 and 43%. So, but they have these controls in these conservative states with these senators. They know that their power comes through the Senate because that's where the decisions are largely made in terms of putting people into positions of real power. This is what we must understand, how government actually works. That's how we must actually work. So when you are hearing about people who, and I've seen some people who think that their lives our life is going to be better. And maybe for them, if you are willing to compromise the rest of everybody else for your own selfish purposes. But I think that there is going to be a few people who are going to be very sadly disappointed because they're relying on their lives being made better because they decided to run with the MAGA group. And that's your right. That's your right to decide on who it is that you want to support. But it also reveals on what you truly represent. That you would compromise the whole for your own personal benefits. And in large degree because you really don't understand. It also reveals that you really don't understand and you're not really aware. And because you can go out and make a little bit of noise and convince a few people, you go out and you take some pictures, shaking some politician's hand that gives people some sort of idea that you may have some sort of influence. Not really. You're being used by them. You're being played by them. And it will show. It will show itself. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why this is not happening, but you're not in my green room. So I'm not sure. So he's having a hard time. I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm trying to get him into the program, but he's having an issue trying to get in. We're going to try to see if we can't get him. Let's see if we can't get him in. Let's see if we can try to get them in. Hang on one second for me, please. I appreciate you all's patience. Let's see if we can't get them back in to see what's going on here. Just hang on just a second for me. I'm going to try one more time here. And I'm not sure what it is that they can't seem to get in. So we're going to send my guest an invite. Let's see if we can't get them in. Just click on the link. Just click on the link. All right. Okay. All right. We are back. We are back here. Just click on the link. All right. So we're going to try that again. All right. So look, look, we have had a very, very, probably one of the most secure platforms in terms of being able to vote in this country, and minuscule um, incidents of people who have tried to defraud the system. Minuscule. So that we have a very strong process in terms of being able to register to vote in this country. And there have been people who have tried to buck the system and have been prosecuted for it. And the number of people who may have bucked the system were inconsequential. So the thought of, if we had a major problem there, obviously it would have, evidence would have shown evidence. Again, what I say to you is evidence. Things have to be evidence-based. I don't care how it sounds or how good it sounds. And many people are repeating things based on what they have heard somebody say, without understanding what is behind what they are saying. When we have not had problems in these areas, and you have these manufactured so-called problems or manufactured crises that is coming from a group of people, and then they put into place, they try to make it prohibitive for people to participate. Like in the North Carolina or in Georgia, where instead of them expanding places for people to be able to go and vote, to just go vote, forget about registering, but to go vote, what do? Reduce the number of polling places, take away early voting days, to suggest that if we take away early voting days, you won't have as many people to turn out to vote. This is all comes from Republicans. None of this have come from Democrats, all from Republicans. And that doesn't raise any questions in people's minds. It ought to. Why should it be made more difficult for a citizen in this country to exercise his or her right to cast their vote? Why should a person who is incarcerated, even though that they have committed a crime and been found guilty of that by our judicial process, why should they lose their right to vote? And the states have the right to take control of you as their property, as a legalized enslaved person, because that's what the 13th Amendment says. It's legalized slavery. When I was in law school, I asked the question, why is that still in the Constitution? I don't know. Why is it in the Constitution? Why is it in the Constitution? And this is what it reads in the Constitution. Let's pull it up. slavery in the Constitution. Let's see. Let's look at and the 13th Amendment. It says, the 13th Amendment, the United States Constitution provides neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. Watch this. In the 13th Amendment, this is what it says. The 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution provides neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. So what they've done is they've said, we know how we can keep slavery. Let's find ways to incarcerate them. And we can have legalized slavery. Here we are in 2025 that we are still allowing for people to be enslaved. That means that they can just throw you in prison and they pay you, 3 cents an hour or whatever it is, because you have become property of the state. You're under the control of the state. I fundamentally believe that that should be removed from the Constitution. And there's not a whole lot of people who are talking about it. I believe that that should be removed from the Constitution. All right, we're going to get back to that. We're going to come back to that. My guest seems to have gotten into the green room. And so we're going to be talking about this issue, which is tantamount to many of the issues that we are faced across the country, many of the issues that we're faced here in the area of Chicago, Cook County, and state of Illinois. And why I say that it is extraordinarily important that if we're not going to organize, we cannot expect that we can hold people accountable, even people who look like us. It is my fundamental belief that we must amass power. Power is only amassed by two ways. Either you have a huge checkbook or you have a lot of votes. Those are the two ways that you amass power within a democratic process and influence to be able to make demands and see that those demands get met. If the demands don't get met, then we have the power to change the positions of the people or change the people who are in those positions. So I said earlier that we don't need to create a third party. It's unrealistic. We don't need to go to the Republican Party. That's not an option for us. What we need to do is fix the party that we are best getting results from, just like you do your vehicle. If your car breaks down and something goes wrong with your car, you take the entire car to the shop and they fix the part of the car that has malfunctioned so that the entire car runs better. That's what we have to do to the Democratic Party. People who are not working well, we have to extract them and put people in positions so that the party can work better. That's how we have to function. Now, we have to function very differently. We have to organize ourselves together so that we can make those kind of changes when necessary, so that the rest of the party knows that we have the power to do so. And when they can see that you have the power to make changes, then they will start to respond and respect who we are. That's precisely what we must do. It's fundamental. There's no, magic wands to it. It is fundamental. Either we recognize that that's what we have to do and do it, or we continue to make the kinds of incremental, if at all, progress that we make. Are we going to come back to that before the end of the program? Right now, joining me is my guest who has just made it into the green room. I'm going to bring him on to the platform. Is my good friend, retired captain, Chicago Fire Department, Ezra McCann. Ezra, welcome to the program. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, and thank you for inviting me this evening.
You finally got in. I don't know what kind of challenges you were having, but I'm glad you made it. And I didn't know what else to do to get you in, but you finally got in.
Well, I hope it's not this reason, but yesterday I made 75 years old, and sometimes this technology takes a minute for me to really latch on to. Okay, but we're in, so
Yeah.
let's not waste no more time.
All right, wonderful, wonderful. All right, listen, give us some background on this because it's hard for me to wrap my head around this. We live in an area where we have uncommonly a larger population of African American people. We have African American people in positions of authority and positions of power. Currently, we have an African American mayor. The previous mayor, the predecessor, was an African American mayor. We have a person who is African American that is the commissioner of the fire department, who's been on the fire department since 1990, I believe it is, and that is Annette Holt. So, give us the background of to why this is such a struggle to get equity and hires of black men and women on the fire department.
Well, I know you made a statement a long time ago. You educated us on the fact that there's 640,000 black registered voters in the city of Chicago. 70% of those voters don't even vote, okay? So the 30% that we've been leaning on that have put many people in office, I believe we have tried hard to put the right people in position to do what we need to do. You gave a little history about the leadership. We've had two black mayors. Okay, before then, the last three administrations before Brandon Johnson right now refused to do what a contract has dictated since 1980. And since 1980, the contract has dictated that any.
Okay, what happened to my guest?
Okay,
Okay, there you go.
hiring and promotions, 30%. Okay, and that was signed into a contract back in 1980. Harold Washington began to implement it. Our numbers got a little better. But as soon as Harold got out of office and we took on this daily guy again, it went back to business as usual. Our numbers got bad. Right now, like I say, Brandon Johnson and the last three administrations are refusing to follow the law, which is a contract signed by the union as well as the city to say that the black community should have their fair share, which they say is 30% of the fire department. Right now, Mayor Brandon Johnson has just started a new class at the Fire Academy, and there's 113 in the class, only 10 blacks in that class. That's less than 10%. Well, as you looked at the fire commissioner, you say she's a black female. Yes, she came on in 1990. I was an instructor at the Fire Academy when she came on. It's hard to figure out who belongs to the city, when they're just coming in the door fresh. But it didn't take long to find out that she's part of the administration. Since she's been in office, she's not even talking about this 30% that we're talking about. She wants to harp on the fact that black folks are not let's say, educated or good enough to be firefighters. She said we need to do better recruiting. Well, every exam that the fire department gives, in the upwards of 6, 7, 8, 9,000 people show up to take that exam. Every time they give a new exam, they send about that many people home because they don't hire black folks. So again, as you say, we have tried hard to put the right people in position, and just because they are the right color, it don't mean that they're going to do us well. And right now, they haven't done us well at all because our numbers are 5,000 total firefighters right now. There's less than 400 blacks on the job.
I'm looking up now. Let me just say that you just said that the commissioner, are you making references to things that this commissioner has said about Black people not being educated enough or
Educated,
qualified to
to be a
become
firefighter.
firefighters
Yes,
out
I
of the
said that.
people who apply? Now, I listened to this current commissioner. I listened to her speak quite often, and it pains me to listen to her because she does not sound like someone who is as sharp as someone who I think that should be in leadership. So I want to look up and see what her educational achievements and backgrounds are. When she came on the fire department,
She's a college student. Okay, she has a degree up under her belt. But again, seem like whenever you find people like that enter into the city, as soon as the city find out who you are, okay, they try to take control of you. And I think right now they've got total control of her, have had it for a long time back. Okay, as I said, she's in the office right now. As she was climbing the ladder, she took on a position as president of the African American Firefighters League. This is a Black organization within the fire department that has really not served us too well because our numbers are still sad. But she became one of the presidents, okay, pushing for more Black firefighters, more promotions in the fire department. But now that she's fire commissioner, she doesn't speak that language. What she's talking about now is we need to do better recruiting. Well, the last fire exam that they gave, they sent about 5,000 Blacks home that they didn't even, the city admitted that they sent 3,600 Blacks home that they didn't even process. So we don't know if they were qualified or not, but they told them to go home and you got to take the test over again.
and why was that?
Well, because they had a need to give a new exam. And my research over the years, and I came on the job back in 1977, Marine Corps Vietnam veteran, got home, I needed a job. I put in an application, but I wasn't able to be hired because Daley's father, Richard J., decided he wasn't going to hire any minority. I don't use that word anymore, but back then it was Black men and Hispanic men. He wasn't going to allow them on his job. And he didn't. I took a test in 73. His famous words were, "Over my dead body, will even the federal government make me do anything that I don't want to." When he died, November 76, and when he died, Belandic had to hire us because a lot of federal funds was kept from the city of Chicago because they would not hire Black firefighters. Well, once we got hired, okay, the numbers did raise, okay, but again, as I gave you the history about Harold Washington and back in the hands of Daley, Daley lived out his daddy's legacy. He stopped hiring. As Blacks started retiring and leaving the job, they never replaced them. So right now, numbers are, one more time, 5,000 firemen, and we're less than 400 Blacks are on the job. Now, over the years, I've done a lot of research to why this is happening. You said, why would they give a new exam? Well, most of the time they gave a new exam because there was a new group of young white folks that was of age, okay, through the legacy of their family being involved in the fire department, that needed to get on a list. So usually that's how we found that new test was given, because they ran out of the nepotism and cronyism names, and they had to start a fresh list. So again, with giving that new exam, as I told you before, the city admitted 3,600 Blacks were sent home that they didn't need process, and they still have not lived up to the fact that they have not hired 30% of the Black community to be on this fire department. Now, the leader of the city right now is Brandon Johnson. We've been trying to meet with Brandon Johnson ever since he got in office. As a matter of fact, before he got in office, we held a big press conference, Black firefighters and paramedics, and we wanted to know that we was going to endorse him, because we knew that the union that firefighters are forced to belong to was not going to endorse him. So we did a press conference. well attended by firefighters as well as the community. And, we thought that would make a mark with him. Well, once he got in office, to this day, he has hired 4 classes on the fire department. None of them came closer to the 30%. Well, we forced a meeting with him the end of October, first part of November it was, okay. We met with him. And as we started explaining to him about this 30%, he got kind of testy about the fact, well, look, I can't discuss about what happened with Rahm Emanuel, the Daly in the union, Rahm Emanuel in the union, Noe Lightfoot. I can only speak on what's happening with me. Well, I had to bring it to attention that you have hired 3 classes already, and you have neglected to follow the contract with the 30%. Well, he wasn't sure about that. He wanted to check with his administration to find out why that was. He promised us a follow-up meeting. It never happened. Well, just about a month ago, a new class started, 113 in the class, only 10 blacks. That's not even 10%. So for some reason, he is reluctant to follow the contract. And right now, there's contract negotiations going on between the fire department and the union, local number 2, and the city of Chicago Fire Department. And they're trying their best to eliminate that clause. It's been there for the last 42 years that they have not lived up to. They have just let that clause sit. There was no need to get rid of it, okay, because they never used it. So the union and the city sat on it because Daly and the union agreed that they didn't need it. Rahm Emanuel and the union agreed they didn't need it. Somehow or another, Lloyd Lightfoot refused to use it. And now Brandon Johnson, who speaks on the fact that he understands about the underserved communities. Now, he won't say black communities, but he says underserved all the time, okay? And who is the underserved communities within the city of Chicago, Mark? It's the black communities. But he says he understands right now the fire department contract is the only contract that dictates that they should hire 30% black. Only contract. So right now, it's very easy for him to deliver that to the black community. But again, as I told you, this is the 4th class he has hired. 113 in the class, only 10 black, less than 10%. And he needs to explain that. Because right now we showed him how he has the right. We showed him if people don't like him following the contract, let them sue. In the past, Mark, they've always made us as the black firefighters sue the city to make them do what they're supposed to do. In 1995, they gave an entry exam. And when the numbers came out, 9,600 African Americans took that exam. And when the numbers came out, they only passed 6,000 blacks, okay? They sent 3,000 blacks home, say you failed, okay? Well, they decided it's going to do a lottery. And out of the lottery, okay, at the end of the day, they said if you didn't score 89 or better on that exam, you had to go home. They sent you a letter and say you're not qualified, see you later. Well, when that happened, we said business as usual. I found 197 blacks that took that exam. I sent them to the EEOC with a charge that says the city of Chicago discriminated against the black applicants. A lot of people tried to get me to change that language, including Operation Push. They wanted to do the rainbow thing. They said, well, we fight for everybody. All due respect, Operation Push. I said, I can't do that because nobody fights for the black community. I held on to that language. The EEOC investigated for 2 years, 96, 97, 98. They came out and said, yes, the city of Chicago discriminated against the black applicants. Daly fought this charge in the court. It went to court, the 7th Circuit. He fought it for 18 years, knowing that the numbers were bad, okay? His last day in office, the federal government told him that you will hire 111 black firefighters. Now, there was 6,000 in the class action lawsuit, Mark. 5,889 blacks got $9,800 checks. I know somebody in your listening audience knows somebody got that $9,800 check. Well, again, people applauded that as a great victory. Any small victory, we applaud the black community, but we don't usually get victories. But I didn't agree because they only gave us 111 jobs, and they sent 5,889 blacks home with almost a $10,000 check. How long will that last for a family?
And the 5,000 people that got a $10,000 check were people who were waiting 18 or 20 years
Yes.
that they could have made a career. They could have bought a home. They could have put their children through school and all kinds of things, and strengthen the economy of our community. All kinds of things. They could have improved the lives of 5,500 people who had to wait for $9,800.
Yes, $9,800. The taxpayers' dollars. They gave them that check. Go home. Now, that's what you just said happens in the white communities. I make a statement all the time that in the city of Chicago, Mark, listen, there are no poor white communities.
Not at all.
Say it again. There are no poor white communities. This is where all the city jobs land, okay? Fire department, police department. If the white kid wasn't sharp enough, he ended up on streets and sands, okay? But again, you go to their community. We used to hire the fathers and the sons. But now you look at the fire department and the hirees that are coming on, we're hiring the fathers, sons, the wives, and the daughters now. I mean, the whole family is getting a city check. So again, when you see that happening and you compare it to the black community, hey, we would be far ahead of the game if we were afforded that same luxury. And that's all I've been fighting for the last 45 years, almost 50 now, okay, is to get that same consideration for the black community. If we in the black community, if we have our young folks with jobs, making good money like they do in the white community, Mark, they don't have to steal cars. They can buy a car, okay? They don't have to rob because they got plenty of money in their pocket, okay? But again, we see that has affected us. We have maybe 4, maybe going into 5 generations that have done without. And right now we're seeing the end result. I'd like to add this point that the city of Chicago is the largest employer in the city of Chicago. But the black community don't even have 10% of all the great jobs that they have that pay good salaries, that offer great benefits, and at the end of the road, a great pension. And that's something that you don't hardly hear the black community speak about. It's pensions, okay? They're slowly disappearing, okay, with these 401ks and things like that, okay? We missed out of that game. But again, as we move forward, definitely for sure, we see that it has hurt our community. I told you I just made 75. I've been retired 19 years from the fire department. But Mark, I won't get off of this until I see us breaking it back, okay, of what has really affected our community. And to this day on, talking about Brandon Johnson, I've had no help from the black politicians that us 30% that do vote and put in office. There have just been no help. And that's why I really applaud you with the 10 by 10. We need a black voting bloc that truly understands, okay, what we're really cultivate and elevate the black community to be productive again. And that should start somewhere. But right now, I don't see many people, okay, that's in these leadership roles. A lot of the first blacks in whatever position, a lot of the first blacks have just not served us well. And we see what the end result has been.
Well, I think, I want us to, we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to have more than one of these conversations because I think it's important that we, in terms of having the conversation of why we have to do what we have to do, to be able to have a face on why we have to do what we have to do and what people have been working on. You have been here in Chicago far longer than I've been. I've been here in Chicago now 40 years. And the reason why these inequities show, is because of one reason that we have finally come to understand is that we have been moving about doing the great work that people have been doing like yourself and others in other areas without the kinds of support behind them that when they go and sit down and talk with whoever it may be, whether it be Brandon Johnson or Lori Lightfoot or whoever it may be, if Ezra was to go and have a meeting with the fire commissioner, to have a meeting with the mayor, and they know that there are 200,000 people that is behind Ezra, that Ezra didn't walk into the room with just Ezra. Ezra walked in the room with some real power now, to where he doesn't have to ask the mayor or ask the commissioner. These are what our demands are. These are what our demands are. This is what you agreed to, and these are what our demands are. If you don't meet these demands, then we have to replace you with somebody who will meet those demands. When you have that kind of strength, I guarantee you that when you come out, we won't have to replace them, because they are going to do what is necessary, because they now know that we have finally garnered collective power. That when Ezra speaks, Ezra's voice is now elevated, because he's got 200,000 people that when he comes back and he says to us, look, I went and met, provided them with A, B, C, and D, and they didn't deliver. And then we, as a committee of black voters, say, okay, they didn't listen to what you had to say, then they will listen to what we do. They will have to respond to what we do, because 200,000 people who are in a union of a block will determine any election in the city, county, or state, period. And what we have missed over many years is what real power looked like and how real power is garnered. Real power is not garnered by the way that we have been engaged. They have manipulated us, because it makes no sense when you just look at the math. And when I hear what you have been saying, and the work that you've been doing, and the work that Quintin has been doing, and others are doing, but yet they basically, with the lights on, say, okay, we've heard your pitch, we've heard you cry, we've heard you do this, you sued this, whatever, we paid out a few pennies, but we're still going to do the way that we choose to do it. And the reason why they're doing that is because there is somebody else who has power control over those decisions. And we have to take it back, because we'll have to take it, not take it back, but we have to take it because we have the collateral instruments to do that. So that's why I really think it's important for you and Quintin and others to articulate what has been happening in the history of it, in order for us to understand what we have to do to transform these conditions.
Mark,
go ahead.
If I may jump in, as you eloquently put that, all the research that I've done, everything that I have figured out why we've been left out and what help we need, I went in with demands and all. But just as you said, as they look around, okay, and they do their research on me, they have found out that I have not had the support like I should have. So that's why I do truly understand your concept. And I know how important it is for us to finally put that voting block together. Because that is what has killed my movement, okay, is that they know I don't have that many supporters, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Brandon Johnson met with me, and I'm so sorry to say, but as he has done his research, he told me, he said, I am familiar with your work, okay? But he has not supported my work, okay? Because he knows I really don't have a big following.
There's not a threat. There's not a threat.
Right.
Right?
Oh,
there's not a threat.
I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", 340 pounds, okay? But that's not heavy enough, okay? When you're talking about politics, when you're talking about politicians, they look and see what support you got behind you. And if you don't have it, you're not getting no consideration. And I must say, over the years, as long as I've been involved, I was continue to be involved. And that's why I am truly a supporter of yours with this 10 by 10, because I know what a change it could bring. But again, because I haven't had that backing, okay, over the years, the past now 4 administrations, they know I'm right, okay? They know what needs to be done, but they also know that I just don't have the backing, okay, to make them do anything, because they know come next election, okay, Ezra McCann is not bringing 200,000 people, okay? He's going to cast his vote the right way. I'm always on the right side of the fence. Never do I really have a great winner in this game, okay, because, you know, I kind of know who's who. But I must give it to Brandon Johnson. Last time we had a lot of hope in him that he was going to be the game changer, because he speaks the language. Man, do he speak it right. But we don't see him delivering for the Black community. A lot of other communities, a lot of other faction of people, but we don't see him delivering for the Black community. And again, I'm hoping that somebody from his camp is really listening to this tonight. Hey, he owes us an answer. Why is this? Okay. Why is this? I mean, is he truly want to be a one-term mayor? Okay. Because as we move and support your issue, I believe we can do it, Mark.
Well, let me say this. He may not be a one-term mayor, because we have to look at this in an agrarian way. While we are building the voice on behalf of our community, until such time that we do that, we may very well end up in a situation where we don't have a choice other than what is there, depending on what we do. And we have the choice right now. We have the choice right now to decide and to organize ourselves in a position so that in 2 years, we can put forth a candidate that we can elect to that office, or we can be in a position that compels the person who is in the office now to shift from the position of being controlled by whatever other faction that he's controlled by, which he is controlled by. So let me just kind of break this down so that we understand that numbers matter. Brandon Johnson is a part of the Chicago Teachers Union. The Chicago Teachers Union is 30,000 members strong. Brandon Johnson and Stacey Davis Gates, who is somebody that I respect, they started a organization called the United Working Families. The United Working Families has more than 500,000 members in that organization or that political action committee. I never heard of the United Working Families before the last campaign. I wanted to find out who this United Working Families was. I wanted to find out who's the United Working Families. So what did I do? I infiltrated it. I joined the United Working Families and went to the United Working Families meeting. The first meeting I went to was at some warehouse someplace that over in, I think it was New City or something like that. The second meeting that I went to for the United Working Families was at the Chicago Teachers Union in that big, beautiful building on 1800 West Carroll. And there they laid out to us who the officers were. Stacey Davis Gates is the chairman of the board of the United Working Families. Most of the people who are in the United Working Families are made up of people from the Hispanic community. There are a few blacks, there are some whites, but mostly the people there are from the Hispanic community. What am I saying? Brandon Johnson was largely supported by people from the Hispanic community, and we as the Black community by default had to vote for Brandon Johnson because we did not have another option. Paul Vallis was not an option that we could vote for. We could not vote for a Paul Vallis who was supported by 5 billionaire MAGA Republicans. So he was not interested in our community. he was trying to manipulate us and trying to give us, that story because we have this nonpartisan race. But the reality was, I put out a piece as to who it was that was behind him. So we didn't have a choice. We didn't have a choice. So we had to support him by default. So the fact that we had to support him by default, Brandon Johnson's people understood that. They understood that. But Brandon Johnson's loyalty has to be to the people who largely put him there. What am I saying? What I am saying to us is that we have to put ourselves in a position to decide on who we want to put there, whether it be Brandon Johnson or whether it be whoever. But if we don't put ourselves in a position of power, meaning that we have to have a corporate collective agenda so that we have this block that people like yourself, who would be the chairman of providing us with the information of what's going on within the fire department, you would come back to us and give us marching orders. See, I'm not the head of any of those things. We got people who are doing education. We have people who understand the fire department. We have people who understand the police department. We have people who understand, the health issue. All these areas, people are fighting hard for equity for us in the Black community. But they are making very little progress because they don't have the power behind them. And that is what we have to correct in order for us to get the kind of respect that we absolutely deserve, that everybody else is getting. It is the only pathway to transforming and transcending these conditions, because I can guarantee you that once we open our eyes and we say we're putting ourselves together, not for the purposes of anybody's ego, but for the purposes of our ecosystem being strengthened, then I guarantee you, before an election happens, the phone will be ringing. Your phone would ring asking for you to come to the mayor's office to have a conversation. Why? Because Ezra, being the chairman of the Black Firefighters recruitment hiring, is a member of the 10 by 10 to win Black voting block and is supported. So they can no longer treat you the way that they have in the past, because they count the numbers and they say, well, wait a minute, Ezra's been strengthened now. So we can no longer be dismissive of what he has been arguing and demanding for all these years. We've now got to respond. If we want to be where we are, we got to respond. And if he doesn't respond, then we get a new mayor and we tell that mayor who we want as a commissioner. You will come back to us and say, this is a person who I believe that will be a good commissioner for the fire department, and the mayor will have to respect what our recommendations, which are really demands. It's very fundamentally simple. It's very fundamentally simple. For Black people here where we are in this region of Chicago and Cook County in the state of Illinois, we are in an uncommon position than most Black people are in the rest of the country. Where you are in Florida, Black people have been basically neutered in Florida to having no voice, because there's only about 11 or 12% of Black people in the entire state of Florida. And in the southern part of Florida where you are, the South Americans control everything, going all the way as far down south as Homestead, Florida, which used to be heavily populated by blacks and people from the West Indies, and you go as far south as you can go, and you can see how things are heavily become populated and controlled by the Hispanic community. Here in where we are, to have the numbers that we have, 660,000 registered black voters in Chicago proper, more than 1.5 million in the entire county. We got another 150,000 who are eligible because they have aged in to become registered voters. That kind of power that has basically been tabled because we have not focused ourselves in a wide enough area to get, narrowly focused and saying, hey, we can talk about all these other issues. We can put the best game plan in the world together. But if you don't have a strong enough team to play the game, your playbook doesn't matter. Your playbook is just a great plan with no power.
Right. 2 points you bring up. First of all, I want to listen to the audience and know I'm in Florida because I'm chasing the weather. I didn't come out here to get involved in the politics. So
I know it. I know that for sure. I'm just trying to juxtaposition.
Oh, no. And I see it here. Okay. And what Mark just said is so true. I mean, we have no, we're not visible here, believe me. Okay. But again, back to Chicago, as you talk about his base, we're talking about Brandon Johnson being
yes.
Well, a little history. When we put that clause in the contract, 30% black, it was to settle a strike that was in 1980. Okay, we can get into the details of that later. But it settled a strike because black firefighters went across the picket line. Okay, and again, when they figured out that was going to happen, they knew they had to end that 23-day strike. So in part of the negotiations, okay, we actually supported bringing in the Hispanics with us, and we lobbied for them. So the 30% black, it was 45% minority participation within the fire department, hiring and promotions. 30% black, 15% Hispanic. Now in 1980, they said the fire department was 7% black and only 2% Hispanic, okay? Well, fast speed forward, the Hispanics have gotten their 15%. Because all the way from Daley, okay, with HDO, the Hispanic Democratic Party, okay, Rahm Emanuel embracing the Hispanics, Lori Lightfoot, I guess she kind of played that game, and now you bring the history where Brandon Johnson's main base, the heaviest base, is the Hispanic community. Well, right now, you look at the fire department, I gave you those numbers in 1980. The Hispanics are 18% of the fire department right now, okay? And we're still around, our numbers have dropped. We might be 5 or 6% of the fire department right now. So again, I sort of fault the Democratic Party as we share that 660,000, 640,000, whatever we say, black registered voters. The Democratic Party have never, ever made a move to try to help us as the black community bring all them people back to the voting booth, okay? And again, they're satisfied with the 30% that land them what they need, okay, to keep power within the city of Chicago. But they've never, ever have been concerned about how to educate the black community to try to bring them back. Now, we got a ton of reasons why they don't vote, okay? But there's got to be some type of a movement that they could have led, okay, to bring those voters. And like you say, with those numbers, city of Chicago, and as you peruse the suburbs, okay, around us, and we control this, we should control this state with people that can do as well. But that 30% that do come out and vote, I mean, they're happy with the, whatever they get, and most of them are working class, Democratic black people, okay? They're happy, and they just don't care about the bottom working class and the poor in our different neighborhoods. And it's really hurt us because a lot of those people, I mean, they own the books, but they just don't vote, Mark.
Well, we have to, rather than continuing ourselves to analyze that issue, and I'm not, listen, I'm a registered Democrat. I'm going to be a registered Democrat. And I think that we have to make the Democratic Party run better. I use the analogy of a vehicle. If your car is not working well, you take your car to the shop and you get whatever is not working well repaired on your car so that your entire car runs better. We have to take the Democratic Party to the shop and we have to fix and replace the parts that are not working well so that the entire party works better for us. But we have to be the repairers of that, not the Democratic Party. We have to repair the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party is broken in many respects, but we can repair it. And the way that we do it is that we have to take control of it. We have to infiltrate it and take control of it from the very local levels, the local offices, till we get to the state offices, all the way to the federal. But it starts at the local level. Where we are positioned here in Chicago and Cook County, we have the masses to be able to take control and infiltrate that party and have national implications, not just here in Chicago, not just in Cook County and the state of Illinois, but if we garner 100, 200,000 of us together, organized, moving in that direction, I guarantee you we will draw national implications because you cannot find ever where we have ever institutionalized ourselves to be organized with that kind of agenda and power to move in the direction that we're talking about moving. Listen, we have all of the talent and intelligence. Yourself in the fire department. We have people who are just as strong in the police department. We have that are black. We have people who are just as strong in the health areas in Cook County areas of health. In every area of concern, we have a black person or black people who have the ability to inform us about what the problems are and where we need to move to have those problems addressed for equity for our communities. We are not, for those people who may be misled, we are not talking about being anti anybody. We are not even focusing our energy on being anti anybody. We're focusing all our energy on making sure that people in our community are equitably represented, invested in, and have opportunity, period. And when our community does better, everybody does better. When black people do better, white people do better because we go buy their stuff. We buy their appliances, we buy their cars, we buy their clothes, we buy all of their stuff. So when we do better, everybody does better. So go ahead.
As a group, okay, again, we're a small group, but we've come together and we understand this concept. And we're organizing right now, as you say, about all the different factions, the healthcare, education, okay, what other areas, housing, okay. We do know that if we bring that group together, okay, we'll be more successful about doing what we're trying to do now. But my group, okay, the fire department organizers that are still on the road, okay, we understand that we have to organize our people, okay, to say that we need to be part of the 10 by 10. Because again, that's the only thing that's been missing over the last 100 years probably, okay, is us not bringing our people together as one, okay, to make a move on whatever we need in this city. So again, I need you to know, Mark, that we have discussed it. We are going to get more and more active, okay, into the movement. And again, I think we can help break the barrier of trying to find a way to achieve that 200, 300,000 voters. And I mean, it could be better if we get the ball rolling, okay?
Listen,
300,000, we talking small numbers on what it could be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the goal is for us to get to a 1 million voting block, right? But we know that if we get to 200,000 where we are, we will turn the tide on what has been happening. With just 200,000 voices connected, strong together, we will turn the tide. We will transform our communities in ways, and people will say, well, how are you going to transform your community? That means because you're going to be able to say to your government, this is what we expect in our communities. Whoever it is that's there, whoever it is, doesn't make any difference who the person that's there. If they don't respond, they know we have the power to change their position. We have the power to do it. When you have the power to say to a person, we are taking you out of that position. That's why, as much as I don't like calling his name, the MAGA Republicans behind Trump, that's why they have power over Republicans who didn't want to fall in line. And when those Republicans didn't fall in line, what did they do? They primaried them. They lost their seats, which is why we also have to understand that the primary election is the election for us. We've got to participate in the primary, and we've got to take control of primary elections when we have them. If we had 200,000 people in the block and we had determined candidates in seats in the primary, this past primary, we would have swept the primaries because there was only about a total of 17, 18% participation in the primary. If we had 10,000 people in each one of the districts, we would have swept the election. Swept the election with our candidates. So that's where power is. Power is not in protesting is important. But the real protest is having the power to be able to determine a person's position. That's real power. That's real power. And I am looking forward to seeing us come together, seeing firefighters coming together, seeing teachers, seeing police, seeing people from every area of our community coming together, seeing those young men who have been disenfranchised and those young women coming together, realizing that they have a powerful voice to transcend the conditions of our community. We can remake the South and West sides of Chicago to look and function just as healthy as the North side of Chicago is now functioning. When I came to Chicago in 1985, November 18th, 1985, when I drove down Lawrence Avenue coming from the airport, Lawrence Avenue had as many vacant buildings as you might find in Inglewood when I came in 1985. In 2025, Uptown Ravenswood has been redeveloped probably 2 or 3 times, and it is bustling. It's thriving, as well it should. But Inglewood, the West Side, South Shore, Roseland, our communities should be bustling too and thriving too. And it is up to us to do it. And I'm going to continue to be on this bandwagon of talking with us and trying to encourage us to bring ourselves together. You know, I often and constantly remind us of what Stokely Carmichael said, that individualism is a toxic cancer. We don't have the luxury of individualism. He says, no Black person in this country makes any advancement solely based on his or her talent or worth. All individual advancement is based on mass struggle. We make no progress in this world without shedding our blood. Therefore, brothers and sisters, your advancement and success does not belong to you. It belongs to the people. And if you do not use your success or advancement for the benefit of your people, it is a betrayal for the people or of the people who shed their blood for you. What he's simply saying is we are interdependent upon each other. I need you as much as you need me. And we can't survive without each other. And we certainly can't thrive without each other. That's the bottom line. This is tragic to me that 50 years later, 40 years later, and 2 Black mayors and 2 Black commissioners later, that we are still having this conversation of saying that we got less than 10% of Black people on the fire department.
Mark, correction. 4 Black fire commissioners, okay, we've had in the past.
Yes.
They have a situation whereas, to confuse the public, anytime you see the leadership of these 2 major departments, police and fire, as being Black, okay, the average citizen that is working hard to make the day-to-day living arrangements for them and their families, okay, they don't have time to do the research. But if you see the Black fire commissioner, the Black police commissioner, if you see all the big chiefs of Blacks and all, Black and all, it's confusion. Everybody with not that time to research would say, man, they have really achieved. But when you look at the bottom of the working firefighters and the working officers in the community, it's not that. You see that you go to any firehouse, I don't care where the listener audience live, they go to their nearest firehouse right now, it is 99, I would say 90% Black, okay? White, excuse me. I say Black. A lot of houses in the communities, 91st and Cottage Grove, okay? 31st and 34th and Calumet, 39th and Wabash, okay? 104th and Harvard, 75th and 120th and State Street used to be, all them houses used to be all Black firehouses, okay? As we progress, you go now, you can't find a Black. If you watch fire trucks and start paying attention, you can't hardly see no Blacks riding in fire engines and fire trucks. And when you look at
I was watching, you know, I pay attention to that all the time when I see the fire engines driving through our neighborhoods and see who is on those fire engines, in particular who's driving those engines, and most of the personnel that's on those engines, and most of them anywhere in our community, most of them are white.
Yes.
You might see 2 Blacks on a rarity on an engine.
You see light-skinned people too, but as I gave you the numbers on the Hispanics, okay?
Yes.
Whites and Hispanics are,
right,
you know, ruling the jobs in our community. Streets and Sands is worth. I want the listening audience to know that my research has been on the fire department, okay? But I speak loud about city employment, period. Police department, fire department, streets and sands, okay? Department of sewers, water, what have you. Those are the great jobs that make these great white communities where there are no poor white communities.
Right.
So again, this is what I'm talking about, okay? If you are the leader of the largest employer within the city of Chicago, which is the city of Chicago, they're the largest employer. And you don't take the leadership role to show how you need to put Black people to work, it's a big problem. So right now, as we speak, okay, and as I told you, Brandon Johnson speaks eloquently about understanding, about the underserved communities. Oh man, I get tired of him saying that. He won't say Black, okay, but he say underserved, and that's, I guess, I know that's to be safe. But again, we know who the underserved communities are. We can look, we know where the jobs are not. So again, he's not serving us well, okay? This message need to get out. I'm talking to the listening audience right now as we're talking about these numbers. Fire department number 1, because that's where I come from. But call your alderman and question him. I mean, the average listener in your audience right now don't have one police or one fireman living on their block. And maybe don't even have a city worker. So again, this is not what you find in the white communities. You go to Mount Greenwood, you got 3 and 4 firemen and 5 and 6 police living on the same block.
On the same block.
Jefferson Park on the north side, same thing. And then another point about those different wards, as we look at the incoming president, okay, this is where, and then, you know, a lot of people in Chicago voted for President Trump, incoming Trump, okay? This is where the votes came from. So to a degree, okay, these undercover Republicans, okay, are taking the benefits of our Black-run city, okay? I know that's kind of heavy to think about, but think about it, okay? If you look at where Trump got all his votes within the city of Chicago, okay, it's those great run, okay, great living white communities that I say are not poor, okay, but this is where his
Right.
folks came from. So I
Hmm.
mean, how ungrateful can you be, okay, when we support the Democratic Party to the highest, we support Mayor Brandon Johnson to the highest, okay. I mean, please, a lot of them wards I'm telling you about didn't vote for Brandon Johnson, okay.
Well,
But
that's the, you know, look, that's why we have to take control of the vote. We have to take control of the vote. We have allowed for them to basically say to us, these are the candidates that we have selected and slated that you have to choose to vote from. That's what we have allowed them to do. And we have got to stop that from happening. We have got to turn that tide from saying to them, letting them choose who it is that is our choice of candidates, to putting ourselves in a position to do that. Period. Whenever they have the power to do that, to choose the candidates, well, if they put the candidates before us, whether it's 4 or 5 or 2 or 3, no matter who it is that we vote for, they put forth the candidate, and whichever one gets elected, they're not responsible to us. They're not going to be responsible to us. They're going to be responsible to the people who selected and slated them. We have to take that from them. We have to stop allowing for them to make those decisions for us. Once we realize that and actually do it, then you will see them, even before you get to an election, you will see them respond in a different way to whatever leadership is in place, whether it's you with the fire department or Quintin or somebody else with whatever. As a body moving in a unified direction, it will break up all of what they, garner and enjoy right now as influence and privilege and power. We have to break it up.
Well, again, we are on board, Mark. Okay, again, we're doing our best to pass the word. As I talked earlier about nepotism and cronyism.
Yeah,
there are a lot of black firefighters, okay, that wanted their sons and even daughters to be firefighters, but it just didn't happen. A lot of their kids got
couldn't get them on.
A lot of their kids got $9,800 checks and said, "Now go home," okay. So again, it's a must for our community to understand.
Let me ask you this.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. So there were 5,500 people that got $9,800 checks, right?
5,889.
5,889.
5,889, and they gave us 1,100 jobs. That's 6,000 in the class action lawsuit.
Wait, 1,100 or 11 or 111?
111. I'm sorry, 111. Correct. But again, I don't even have to read a paper that. I mean, it's just so embedded in me on how they have treated us. 5,889 and only gave us 111 jobs. Okay. New York pattern off of our lawsuit. We should have got 333 jobs as well to deal with first cut. But somehow or another, in them 18 years, they dwindled it down. And they allowed Daly to hire during that 18 years. In effort to, okay, we didn't get no jobs.
Right.
But they allowed it to water it down to 111 jobs. New York followed the lawsuit like we did. But they said minority, okay? They didn't say black. Now, I don't know if that made a difference or not. But they got 333 jobs. Like we first headed out with it, and they patterned it all the way to the T on that. They won their lawsuit. But you know how many minorities is in New York, okay? How many African Americans got jobs, okay?
Right.
Well, again,
when you look at the numbers based on the numbers, it's minuscule. It's still not even a drop in the bucket. Still not even a drop in the bucket. All right. Well, listen, Ezra, we're going to continue next week. We're going to come back with you, and Quintin Curtis is going to be here. Quintin Curtis is also just newly retired from the Chicago Fire Department. He is also he's the CEO of the Black Firefighters Brigade. Is that what it is?
The Black Fire Brigade. And
The
again,
brigade.
setting the stage for next week. And please, listen, audience. It's going to be a good show if Mark brings us back. Right now, Quintin Curtis, okay, his organization qualifies young blacks to be EMTs and paramedics, okay? In other words, getting them in position where to be a fireman, you have to be an EMT. So what Quintin is doing is getting you ready before you come to that hurdle, okay? Hey, well, I'm already EMT, now make me a fireman, right? Well, he's doing a great job, okay? He has already certified many. And as many as he has certified, he's getting them hired on private ambulance companies, which make a fraction of what the city of Chicago paramedics make, okay? And other private concerns where you need to be an EMT. EMT, to be a 911 emergency operator, you have to be an EMT, okay? To kind of help people on the phone until they can get your ambulance or some service that you need. So again, it's a great service that he offers. And if anybody out there knows any young brother or sister that's looking for direction and some field to go into, it's a good field to go into. Because even if it's not the fire department, okay, or the police department, there are a lot of businesses that would love to have you part of it if you have an EMT background. Okay, nothing like having somebody in the warehouse, okay, that knows how to take care of maybe a down employee. So it's a very, very, very important thing that he's doing. So look forward to Q coming on next week. He can fill you in more on what he's doing. But I'm so proud of that young brother. I right now am a supporter of his. I've sort of not working as hard as I used to, but there is a small group of blacks, okay, that I see have picked up the baton, okay, and passed it on to them, and they're actually moving forward with it. And until I ain't around no more, I'm going to support them because a lot of people supported me.
All right. Well, listen, we want to also certainly want to thank everybody for participating tonight. And thank you, Brother Ezra, for coming on tonight. I look forward to having that conversation next week with you and Q. And I'm looking forward to, I want to tease the audience. Q is going to talk to us about something that I heard him say at his, I forget what the event was that you had me to go to this past summer, but he talked about them a drone position that they could get. A drone position, they make a lot of money doing it. All they needed to do is to know how to operate a computer, right? We're going to be talking about that next week. That's very, very exciting. I want to thank everybody for participating. Thank you, intellectualradio.com, for giving us this space. Until next week. As a matter of fact, later on in the week, we're going to have a special program, but we'll be back next week with Quintin Curtis and my good friend, Ezra McCann, on the Monday night edition of The People Show. Hang on.
Appreciate it, my brother. Thank you very much once again for inviting me.
All right. Hold on.